Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Trustcast Show. And we're happy to have with us this morning Derek Lundsten. And Derek actually had a very successful software company that he walked away from or exited from in order to get involved with this other company, which he was an investor in. And he's now the president and chief executive officer of a company called LifeGuides. So you're mid exit from one company, and then the founder of LifeGuides, walked into your life. What did he say that made you think, geez, I really have to be a part of this?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't so much that that he walked in my life mid-exit. It was preceded that several years. And so Mark and I met my business partner at an entrepreneurs group, and I was very compelled at the idea at the founding of the guides model, as we call it, the idea that someone could help others going through the same experience or journey. And so I chose at that point to invest my time and my network and other things into the business. And then over the coming years, um, I felt a calling towards life guides and chose to exit that last company and to jump fully into commercializing and building life guides. And the opportunity just felt like it was aligned with where I wanted my life and business career to go, and also just allowed me to serve more people and to contribute to people's lives at a higher level. That was really the draw to it. And I felt that Scrimmage, with the company I built previously, had actually a great name for it. It was the pregame, if you will, to building this venture into its potential, and what we've been doing over the last 6 years.
So tell me, if you will, for our listeners who don't know, what is Life Guides? It's a nice sounding name, but what do you do,
Yeah.
and who's your market?
Yeah, so Life Guides is a technology platform, or you consider a marketplace of sorts that facilitates peer-to-peer matching and conversations in navigating different life experiences, life events, and challenges. So the best corollary I could give to it is if you think of the interface of Airbnb, or you think of the interface of Match.com, as opposed to searching for a romantic partner or a vacation property experience, you're searching on the characteristics of a human being who has real world lived experience in the topic or the event or challenge that you find yourself in. So everything from your career to parenting to health to relationships to life transitions, it's all in there. And then you can sub-select based on whatever's important to you: age, demographics, geography, education, religion, certain characteristics that are important. And then you can filter in, and we're crowdsourcing people's life experiences into a service model that we've quantified education and financial incentives around this as well, and building an entirely new model for how people can receive what you would call peer support or peer mentoring. And what that is doing at a situational level is providing non-clinical mental health, right? Because if you can address the topic in the moment, you can actually stave off the symptoms, anxiety, or other things that cause prolonged stress and physical health challenges over time. And that's really what we're doing at a core level. And to your comment early on, by addressing these challenges in the moment, you're reducing unnecessary struggle and suffering in people's lives.
So, is most of your potential clients are because before I'd talked with David Hester
Yes.
in an
Big.
earlier episode
Yeah.
about your company, and that's how we ended up talking today. Um, Most of your potential clients are actually companies. Is that right?
Well, it's a great question. So all of our potential clients or members are people, human beings. So in over time, we believe that the world at large, uh, and consumers of this service will be our long-term client base. But we made a very intentional decision when we commercialized this business that we would go and sell it to B2B, or to businesses. So employers and health plans and associations and other organizations will purchase this product subscription on behalf of their employees or their members and then offer it to them. And we chose that very specifically because I mentioned the idea of non clinical mental health support. If you think back to the time prior to COVID, you kept hearing a lot about stigma, 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 access, access, access. And what we had identified was that if you could create a peer support framework that was of a high enough quality as perceived by businesses, we could actually address this idea of stigma and access by giving people support in their situations in the moment. And what happened uh, through COVID is one that was proven true, but what's happened even subsequently is that the demand for mental health services have skyrocketed, and we saw that through the pandemic, and that people were seeking clinical services at a rate that has never been seen before, and frankly, the supply and demand curve was completely upended, and now we have a situation where there's a provider shortage. There's a massive increase in diagnosed mental health issues and exponential growth in prescriptions to address this. And we believe that we can, frankly, recalibrate that into a much healthier, holistic way for people.
When an employer says, "We already have an EAP," then what's your response, to that?
Well, I think the simple answer is EAPs probably were well intended 25 years ago when they entered the market, and they've become tools that are about managing risk uh, for the employer and not really necessarily about providing appropriate service. The EAP nationwide rate utilization is about 3%. And so for a very specific population that's in crisis or has severe acute need or severe needs or acute needs, it's providing amazing services. But the entire model is built on 97% of the population not using it. And the reality is there's a large population of the world that is living in complex lives, that they are parents and of young children, they are caregivers for aging parents, they are navigating their career, they're navigating financial stress, and they might not be in crisis, they might not need diagnosable mental health support, but they do need resources, they do need support in the moment. They do have a demand for services that are not being addressed effectively. We hear this constantly from employees and from employers. And so what I would say is the EAP needs a revamp, and LifeGuides is there to provide that evolution of care and services in a way that is reflective of the modern demands of society.
So, explain to me what EAP stands for, or explain to the audience, and why would a company even want something like that?
Yeah, so EAP stands for Employee Assistance Programs. And so again, when you think about how this category was created 25, 30 years ago, I think it started out with a subset of people that were well intended to say, hey, there's a subset of the population that is in severe need of uh, you know, grief of loss of a loved one, suicide, accidents, bankruptcies, things that are really tragic and traumatic, frankly, to people. And these leaders cared about their employees and said, "Hey, we need to provide an outlet and services to address this." And the reality was that at the time, most likely, I suspect that the vast majority of people said, "Well, is this really our responsibility?" And what happened was the the space basically started selling this as a way to mitigate risk, and it became a compliance driven tool more so than about support. And that's how the business grew. Is it was a capitated model. You pay for 100% of the population to use it, even though a small subset were actually using it. But what happened during COVID is that there was actually a demand of people who needed these services, not just for crisis, but just for the mental health and stress of being in isolation, having concern about their loved ones being lost, having the loss of their identity, having the loss of their livelihoods. And all of a sudden, you had demand skyrocket for these types of services, and employee assistance programs were not able to adequately keep up with the demand. And so that then changed the calculus of these employers to say what is the model for the future. And so the reality is how they addressed it in that time was they routed them to their medical coverage to use therapists and other diagnosable support models that have now over the last 5 years increased their healthcare premiums dramatically 20, 30, 40%, and they're on medications. And this is creating another problem. It's swung the other way, Zane. And so that's what we're trying to do is we're trying to recalibrate or rebalance the expectations of clinical versus non-clinical support and crisis versus proactive support.
So, explain that concept of crisis versus. I understand what the EAP is. Hopefully, our audience does. Basically, most of it is around a whole bunch of services and one major focus, which is mental health for their employees, doesn't get used all the time. You talked about earlier about stigma, which is a big thing. A lot of employees are just afraid to. Maybe we're going to go there first. The employees who are afraid to use their mental health services because they're afraid of the stigma that their employer potentially would put on even the using of those services.
Correct. Yeah, I mean that
So
is
you want to talk about that a little bit?
I think that's fundamentally part of why people have not used it right up to this point. I think that's why the utilization rates are roughly 3% nationwide of EAP services, because there's a perception, whether it's correct or not, that by using those services, you are lacking capability to do your job effectively in such a way, and because it's historically been about really, really intense reasons why people use EAPs. And so our model of completely confidential, outside the realm of the employer, suite of services makes it much more accessible, destigmatized approach, and it's designed in such a way that it's that the choice of the employee. You're talking to some other person who has real world experience in that situation. So there's a natural lack of stigma. There's a natural rapport. There's a natural trust, to use your word of the podcast, that takes place because you're talking. Say you're a father who's dealing with parenting, especially his children or rowdy teenagers, and you talk to another father who's been to that situation. There's a trust moment that makes us know. Or you're a veteran who's dealing with post traumatic stress, and you're talking to another veteran who's successfully been through that experience. There's a natural trust that goes through that experience right in that moment that you might not get from a therapist or, from your EAP. It just changes the relationship in that way.
So how do you get these the people who are your advisors
Our life guides.
to how do you yeah, the guides, how do you get them to participate, and how does an employer know, hey, these guys are actually qualified to help?
Well, so the latter part goes back to Dr. Dave, and I'll come back to Dr. Dave in a little bit, and how the qualification and quality control that we've undertaken. But the simple answer of how we built the community, is we would at the time when we were first launching this business, we would target Facebook groups and we would target organizations that were affiliated with a topic with advertisements. So let's just use, for example, caregiving for dementia loved ones, right? We would target
Mhm.
Facebook groups of dementia caregivers, and we would target the Alzheimer's Association members with ads. We would say, hey, if your loved one is, if you're a caregiver or you've been a caregiver and your loved one has transitioned and you'd like to help some other caregivers who are starting that journey, come talk to us. We'd like to see if there can be value for you helping other caregivers along that. And what we found was the demand or the interest to help other people was far beyond our models and expectations, that there was a lot of people that wanted to do that. And we have found that trend
That's
persist
interesting.
across other categories, whether it be divorce or parenting or veterans care or healthcare, whatever it is. The desire for people who are capable and who want to help is high. And so we were able to recruit and build that community. And from that point, we've now basically driven it mostly through referrals, Zane. Like we have amazing people who have become guides. And most times, if you're an amazing person, you're connected to other amazing people, and they tell their friends and family about this and say, you should check out this company. So that's how we built the community first and foremost. Then Dr. Dave and his team, Dave's an amazing individual himself. He's a clinician. He helped build the framework by which we would vet people's experiences and credential and or attribute their experiences and assure that they themselves are healthy and they've been through the life experiences and events that they say they have, and they've successfully navigated them, and they're in a position that they can help someone else on their journey. And we built then a curriculum around how they can do that, that contains everything from opening and closing conversations to demonstrating active listening and empathy to training them on HIPAA and training them on referrals and training them on technology, and all these different things. And that allows these people to become what we call certified guides. And by being on our platform and participating and adhering to our standards, they can help other people and also receive value in return in the form of education and community and belonging and also financial benefits as well. And that's the basics of how we've designed this platform.
So, an HR leader reads a Gallup report that says only 21% of employees believe their company actually cares about them. What's going wrong there, Derek?
Well, I think the reality is, as businesses, our first and foremost responsibility by most, objective standards is to build businesses that create financial value for shareholders. And I think that the reality is when you're looking at making money as the primary outcome, sometimes people feel that they are, cogs in the wheel, if you will, and it's hard for people to be felt that they're necessarily cared about. And so the employers understand that the way to engage people, the way to drive their optimal performance, the way to create more revenue and create more value is to properly recognize and to look at the whole person. And so we believe that by offering life guides and services like life guides, you show your commitment to people as individuals and to their families, to their health, to their well-being, to their development. As we often say, that they can feel seen, heard, valued, and invested in. That's the way that we do this. And the subsequent value of that investment is that people know that you do care, that you're putting your money where your mouth is, and that you're, as employers, reinvesting these things effectively to drive benefits that matter to these people beyond just creating financial value and value for shareholders.
So that last one, value for shareholders, kind of resonates because you always end up going through the accounting department at one point or another. So can you talk about ROI? And I asked Dr. Dave about this too, but I feel like you're uniquely qualified to address
Sure.
this. That the first thing they're company's going to say, yeah, we care about our employees, but we have to really keep our stockholders and our investors and the people who own the company in top of mind, and it's really important that we maintain our profitability. So how talk about ROI and how a company who might be considering something like this, why it would make sense to them
Yeah, and
financially.
I'll say a couple things. One, I think, the lens of shareholders and stakeholders, that, we have a responsibility as leaders, not just to think of shareholders, but to look at stakeholders at large. And that includes employees, that includes our customers, that includes the community at large. So, it's not just a binary make money, create value. Any intelligent business leader is going to look at this and say, there's a system here and they're interrelated in different ways. So that's first and foremost. I want to say that you can do well while doing good. You can make money and support society at large. And in fact, I believe we should be doing that. So coming back to your second question or your primary question, Zane, which is the ROI. There's a number of ways to quantify ROI, and I'll give you a couple examples. So we have one client. It's a large publicly traded organization that specializes in education. They have quantified that LifeGuides is responsible for helping them to retain employees by about 3%. So greater increase in retention of employees by about 3% because they recognize the value that LifeGuides is offering. So I'll just give you some basic math. If you're going to see a therapist as a family member, uh, you're going to spend conservatively about $150 out of your own pocket every time you have a visit. This employer is spending $100 for the year for this employee's family to have unlimited access to life guides. So you just do the math quickly on that gap. $100 a year versus $100 per session for a family. Conservatively, let's do it times 10. You're looking at $1,500 versus $100. Pretty large gap. But the employee knows that you care about them, right? And there's a value in that intrinsically. Now let's just play that out a little bit more. If you're using life guides instead of going to your therapist at a price at that point where it's hitting your claims and you're getting diagnosed and you're being prescribed medications that may or may not be the right solution, that's further increasing your costs. So there's now a duplication of the financial impact that's happening. The turnover cost of losing an employee. Typically, if you lose one employee, that's worth $150,000 to recruit, retrain, and re-engage someone. So 3% at that level is a meaningful financial impact. So those are just a few different designs I've created just right off the bat. But let's look at again manager output, saving managers time in providing services that can address their family's needs and say, hey, if a manager cares about their people and they want to help them, but they can't have one-on-one conversations throughout the day about this topic, they can say, hey, use life guides. Life guides understands, or someone within their community understands exactly what you're going through and what you need. They can provide that outlet for you and save the manager time and save that employee time. Quantify that. I mean, just start to multiply this out. So those are just a few different kind of ways that I would quantify that, Zane. Um, and we are quantifying it for our employers. I'll just further say we have a couple of companies right now that using that math, they believe we're resulting in capping their healthcare premium increases. And you might know right now, healthcare premiums are increasing by about 20% annually. So when there's a cap on that increase, that's millions of dollars of financial value that we're creating.
So, when a company adds life guides to its benefit stack, what changes first and what takes longer?
Say that again. So to clarify the question.
When a company adds life guides to its benefit stack, what changes first? What changes could they realize first, and then what takes longer to be realized?
Oh, okay, got it. Well, first and foremost, what we see oftentimes is clients when they add life guides to their benefit stack, they kind of educate their people to use life guides as the front door, right? And so they come into life guides. Let's just say they're coming in for a healthcare challenge, and we then say, by the way, did you know that your employer offers these suite of benefits to help with that particular need? So there's an immediate value creation that's generated by referring to other benefits and services that they've already invested in. So then the thing that happens over time is as more and more people use the product and have great experiences, they tell their friends and family about it. And so the engagement rate grows. And so then they see even more direct value from the use of life guides beyond the referral that's taking place to other benefits and services. So those are a couple of things that we're seeing right now from our client base.
So tell me, can you walk me through what actually happens in the first session from the moment someone logs in to the moment they hang up?
Yeah. I mean, on a simple level, they go on and say, you pick a topic that's important to you or you're struggling with. Say you want to talk to someone about losing weight. I'll just use that as an example because we have some amazing guides who have been through different weight loss journeys and they want to manage their health. They go on there and they could browse the criteria that I mentioned, based on age and demographics and other details that are important to them. They can browse some profiles and they say they find someone that they want to connect with. They book a session right through our platform and they will have a video call similar to what you and I are doing right now, but it's proxied on our platform, which is a HIPAA compliant platform. And they can go on there. And so say you were the guide, you come on and say, hey, Derek, I see you chose this session. You're interested in your weight loss journey. Tell me about your life. Tell me about you. Why is this important to you? Why now? They'll start asking some questions and they'll start understanding the motivations of what you have or where you've struggled in the past. And they'll start working with you to understand what's important and say, you know what? My personal experience as I went through a weight loss journey a few years ago, here are things that I did, that I worked with a trainer, or I modified my diet, or whatever it may be. Here's different places I look for resources. Here's some outlets that you can check out. Why don't we meet again? And I can be an accountability partner for you as you start working on this process. That could be an example of something that someone might do. And if they,
So I want to dive in right there
yeah, sure.
because I want to I want to dig a little bit because to me you started talking there and I thought, can you make this a regular thing? Because a lot of times these sorts of things fail for a number of reasons. So if I'm going to a gym or I'm going to, if I don't, I go in and I have sit with a trainer and and I'm doing great, but then I don't have the money to pay for the trainer to continue doing that same thing or the weight loss person or whatever. Once that relationship starts, so if someone signed up on a company signed up on lifeguards, or I'm sorry, life guides, lifeguards is something completely different. On life guides, that when the employee goes and he talks to someone, establishes a relationship so they can return, continually and have this ongoing relationship that will help them with the issue.
Correct. They would have unlimited access to their guides, and assuming they like that individual guide, they can continue to rebook them. So let's just use that example you just mentioned for a moment. Say they come on and they tell their guide, "Hey, I'm doing okay on my weight loss journey, but I'm having financial challenges. I think I need to get excuse me, I need to move away from my trainer." There might be a guide who they can be referred to that can actually help them think through budgeting and other questions that might be related to financial health. And so all of a sudden, there's now a conversation about other elements that would be contributing factors to their healthcare journey because they're going to get more effective at managing their finances. Now, keep in mind, none of our people are, providing financial products or services. They're not certified this way. We're not providing medical services or legal services. These are just real people sharing their life experiences, but they can help think through that and point them in the direction of services and resources that their employer offers or that their partners offer that can help them on this path as well.
So all of this is included, and the employer is not advised of any of this going on.
The employer would not be aware of the individual conversations that are taking place. The employer is only aware of high level utilization rates that are taking place in the organization. That's correct.
Okay. And then, so how does the employer know when when the life guides is being successful? How do they say, "Oh, geez, it's sometimes attribution is a difficult thing for a lot of different
Sure.
businesses when they're selling a service to another business. What can you attribute to this happening? How do you guys follow or work with attribution?"
Yeah, I mean there's layers to that question, Zane, but on a simple level, we have a client success team that meets quarterly with our clients that walks them through the high level utilization and speaks to what's happening within that population. We can then work with these clients to, kind of marry this to certain business outcomes that they want to see. And that helps. That's the simple level of how we get that data to them in a way that's blinded, but also supports the business outcomes.
So someone dealing with a sick parent, struggling kid, demanding job all at the same time, what does life guides look like for them?
They might have 3 different guides, to be very specific. They might have a guide that's talking with them about parenting. They might have a guide that's talking with them about their career. They might have a guide that's talking to them about caregiving. Um, we look at these different areas that they can talk to different people to get different perspectives. And ultimately, having the outlet and thinking through these different dimensions of their life and getting proactive around it is allowing them to think differently about what's going on in their life, and then subsequently, if there are resources and tools and benefits that their employer offers in those areas, they'd be made aware of those services, and those benefits, and those resources, and they would then be able to use them more effectively, whether it be financial or health related or whatever it is. So the simple answer is it is access. They have access to information, and then two, they're helping to interpret that information more clearly and in a more time efficient manner, so they can receive the benefit of those services.
So you've tripled revenues year over year under your leadership. What was the single most important thing you changed that drove that?
I don't know that it's an easy answer, single most important thing. I think the simple answer is it's been we are constantly learning. I can't, it's not a, this is not a simple business in terms of input here, output there. This is a Rubik's Cube of a company, is the best way to describe it. And so our team's ability to refine and adjust and communicate these different areas over time, I think has been a key part of it. Our resiliency as an organization has also been a key part of it. Um, we just have an amazing group of people that are committed to this mission, and I think that that is fundamentally what's allowed us to succeed in this environment more than any single thing or decision or thing that we've done. It's just a constant evolution of learning.
So here's kind of a different twist. So, uh, what's the hardest deployment you ever had where everybody seemed to be pushing back, or the culture pushed back hard on implementation, and how were you able to resolve that, or to deal with that? Where you had that kind of pushback on the front end, where somebody drove it in, but then there was a bunch of pushback, and maybe it ended up that it ended up in a good place. But how do you work with a situation like that?
I mean, I think what I would say is that in general, with every enterprise deployment, there's some level of resistance and friction and pushback, right? It's not where that's just part of what goes on with deploying. I mean, and you know this well, Zane. Enterprise software, any type of project, that's part of the process.
Hmm.
So what our team has done well, our client success and engagement team has built best practices that we've seen work well, um, for communicating the value of life guides and the usage of life guides to these employees and their families through things that we do around events, through communications. through different formats, to how we reach people. And ultimately, it comes down to working closely with the leadership and different sponsors within these employers to drive awareness and engagement over a period of time. We do not misstate that this is going to be easy by any means. Like it requires some degree of effort and work to deploy this. But once that is done, to your point, it's like going to the gym. If you put in the work early and with consistency over a period of time, employers will reap the benefits, and their employees, more importantly, will see the benefits in their individual lives and their families' lives.
So, um, let me see, where was I? Okay. What was the result you've seen that even surprised you? Something you didn't expect life guides to be able to move.
I think it just goes back to I'll speak to this idea of community to community. We can really be something to any one topic or population, right? So we had one client uh, that had a large distribution center um, of Haitian Creole speaking employees. And that population was a very hard one to reach for this particular employer. So we were able to go out and recruit Haitian Creole speaking guides to then be able to reach that audience. Um, the bespoke nature of what Life Guides is, and to be able to go recruit, based on demographics, based on religion, based on career paths and specialties. I think we've been able to do something that's different there. And I think that that is something that continues to impress me and impress our clients. The ability to go in and reach into communities and build up that kind of spin it up. Last Dave may have mentioned this as well, but last year during the wildfires and floods, we were able to go out and activate our community of people who had been through natural disaster, recovery, and to activate them in those situations. And so uh, it just speaks to the heart of human beings that they want to help and that they can help. And we've created a model through technology that we can activate that at scale.
So, you use the phrase conscious leadership a lot. What does that actually require of a leader that most leaders aren't willing to do?
It's interesting. There's been some degree of pushback on this topic recently within the venture community, the idea of self-reflection, that we don't want self-reflection. We don't want introspection. That is detracting or distracting from shareholder value creation. And I just think that's just not true. I just think conscious leadership is examination, right? It's the Socratic process of examining your life and examining your values and examining your actions, and to do that on a ongoing active basis, and to not be passive decision makers for one ultimate aim, and to really evaluate that as a system. And that's what I think of as conscious leadership, is that you're really thinking about the implications of your decision on your customers, your employees, their families, uh, the shareholders, the society at large. It's not just an input output binary decision. That's just not the reality of our world. And uh, I respect some people's, I respect that people have different motivations in life, but I believe that uh, in order to truly be fulfilled and to create the most value, it requires a level of consciousness and conscientiousness. So,
So, Derek, here I want to go with to this one here just because I think it's interesting. And correct me if I'm wrong here. You wore a suit to elementary school every day at age 8, and now you rarely wear one.
yeah,
What did that kid believe about success, and how has that changed?
that's really interesting that you found that quote. I mean, I guess there must be some AI scrub that, but yeah, it's not so much about what I.
You didn't scrub it.
Yeah, it's just it, it's I don't know where you found that one from. That's good. It's nice to hear that. I don't know that it necessarily is about necessarily what something that's changed. I think culture and society is changing, right? I mean, I think when I was an 8-year-old kid and and I wore a suit, that's what professional leaders wore. I mean, even still today, I mean, the world leaders wear suits and ties, but I mean, business has become much more casual now. I mean, even yourself, I'm wearing a t-shirt, you're wearing a nice blazer and collared shirt. But
Just for the show,
okay,
just for the show.
but the reality is that was a different time, right? That was, and that's what you wore when you wanted to be taken seriously. And I was a serious kid, I guess, from that standpoint. And over time, the world has evolved and life and business has become more casual. And uh, I've just evolved my fashion, I guess, to reflect that. But I still enjoy wearing a nice suit and tie, to be blunt. And if it was back in style, I'd still wear it. So
So you set a target of reaching 1 billion people in 15 years. Where are you on that journey, and what has to happen next?
yeah, the simple reality is when we first started this company, we were part of a community that asked that question. Like, the idea of being a billionaire is helping a billion people, right? That was the fundamental point of that, right? And so uh that was the service was the ultimate driver of success. And so the way that you do that is by helping people directly, and then they help other people and they help their families and their communities. So there's the ripple effect. So the idea that we're going to help a billion people on our platform, that's not the likely outcome, although who knows over the course of human history what's possible. But the simple answer is, we're helping hundreds of thousands of families directly uh, right now, right? The individuals that are on our platform, and that's having a ripple effect. And I believe that we're on a big breakout in the company right now. I mean, just to give an example, we just launched a very large public university. They have almost 20,000 faculty and staff, 100,000 students. And as we start landing more and more of organizations like that, that have an impact on the culture and have the impact on the employees of tomorrow, I think that's a pretty impactful and accelerated way that we can start moving closer and closer towards that $1 billion number, or that billion person number, excuse me, and create a lot of value for people in the process, right? And so, yeah, that's the answer to your question. I think.
So if a leader's watching this and they know their people are struggling, but they haven't acted, what's the first thing you'd tell them to do tomorrow morning?
Call life guides first. I mean, full stop. Just put life guides into your put life guides into your benefits. If they know their people are struggling and they've not taken action to fulfill it, they should absolutely call us tomorrow and put us in. I personally think it's the best value for money for their people they can think of.
And what's the best way to get in touch with Life Guides?
Our website is lifeguides.com. And, we're also across all the different social media channels, and our team would be honored to serve and support leaders and their people.
Okay, Derek, I think that about winds it up for today. I really appreciate you coming on. I think you have a really interesting company, and I wish you a lot of continued success going forward.
Thank you, Zane. I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate your questions, and I hope this positively impacts your listeners and viewers.
Thanks. Hopefully, I challenge you along the way a little bit. I always try to do that just to because it makes it more
I love
interesting.
it. I'm all for
Tougher
it.
questions are always better. Okay, thanks a lot for coming on.